Grove City Council in our work session this afternoon, November the 16th, 2021. I'm Mayor Guy Fugel, and I'll be conducting this evening, and we have all of our council members here and accounted for. And we welcome you. It's good to be back with you, and I thank Eric for filling in for me last month when I was laid up for a little bit. But and I welcome all those who have joined us here this afternoon, and also our directors and other city staff that have joined here. We'll now move on to our first item, our Community Service Award presentation, and our city administrator will introduce this.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple months ago, as we're all well aware, we had a issue with our water in which we had to enact a boil order in our community. During that process, of course, we had a lot of concerned residents and those that wanted to feel like they could find some safe drinking water. So my understanding was is you couldn't find any bottled water within like a 20-mile radius of Pleasant Grove. We had a local community step up and help us through that tough time. And so I'm going to turn it over to Diana Anderson and let her kind of talk about who it was and what they did.
And this is a delight for me. Usually they don't let me do this, so start the clock, Kathy.
So do it right. You do it. Okay. This is your chance. Okay.
I can't remember which event it was where I first met the Spaffords, but I know Eric was there, and I think we had a Tribe House event, and we just became great friends very, very quickly. And so I knew what they did. And by the way, this emergency for us was nothing new or different for them. They were always giving free water. We went to their ribbon cutting, and I learned about what they were doing, and it was a delight to be in their space. Their space is clean, professional, and so I knew that this was going to be a moment where we were going to need them, and so we contacted them, and it was immediate. Open the door, send people in, we've got free water. And so for a community that didn't have clean water for a brief time, this was the moment where they were already positioned and their hearts were already open to the idea of blessing people with clean water. So it is our pleasure, and we are very, very grateful for what you did. I would love for you and your staff to come up. First of all, just tell us what happened on your end, and then we'll give this certificate, we'll give you this beautiful plaque, and then we would love to get a photo. And look, this is my pointing finger. So Trent and Teresa and their beautiful staff, and tell me her name. Aspen is a delight. Every time I've been in there, Aspen, thank you.
Come on around here, guys.
Yeah, don't be shy.
So, my name's Trent. I'm the founder, and my wife is a co-founder, and our staff, Aspen, Barrett, and Tyler, and Ricardo. So as a water research firm, we've studied the effects of tap water and how it can negatively impact our health. We've gone down the rabbit hole in several different issues. And so it's always been a dream of mine for years, really decades, to open a water research center where people can freely come and learn about the issues that face all of us across the country, really the world. Not only do we give away free purified water, and it's better than water you could buy anywhere. It's free, so Macy's doesn't like us. But we don't have a lot of foot traffic, yet we advertise on our little A-frames out there on the streets, right here on State. But we also are a big supporter of a nonprofit organization called Charity Water. They've been around since the mid-90s, and really an amazing organization that donates water projects across the globe. If we have no water, E. coli is in the tap water, at least we have a tap. Many people, millions every single year, go without tap water. Imagine having to walk to the Jordan River and sending your children to the Jordan River to get contaminated water, and that's what you use to drink it. You might pour it through a dirty sock and then drink it to get the chunks out. So we've been passionately engaged in educating people about charity water, the effects that we can have. So we donate $20 to charity water in our clients' names when they come in to learn, or we go to their home and learn. Ricardo and Tyler are both research analysts, and we share a brief message without a sales pitch. There's no bait and switch. So we educate people on what's in the water, and we make that donation to charity water in our clients' names, in their name. It's not about Genevieve, it's about making a change in the world. So it's our little offer to the residents of Pleasant Grove and surrounding areas that we'd love to, educate people on what can be done about the water in their home, in their business. So we offer a variety of products and services for people in their home or a business to protect from virus, bacteria, E. coli, cryptosporidium, giardia, along with chemicals that we have done a lot of research on. Trihalomethane, chlorine, fluoride is the big one. We're very against fluoridated tap water. It should be our choice if we take a drug. So anyway, that's a little bit about what we do. Aspen has been with us for about 2 years. She's an amazing office manager, and Barrett is our client services director. He goes and changes the filters and maintains products, helps to install these systems. And of course, I couldn't do this without Teresa. She's the whole decorative in the office. It's a beautiful research center with a full kitchen, and people can come and sample the water and taste the difference between. We have one faucet that is regular Pleasant Grove water. And
Great tasting water.
so we have city tap water, and then we have one faucet that is filtered and treated, and people smell that water and they don't smell anything. I'm like, yeah, I don't smell anything, and we have them smell the tap water, and then this is the reaction. It kind of shocks them when they have the comparison. So,
But not just Pleasant Grove, is this around the state, around the nation? Like, is this just cities in general kind of have this type
Yes.
yeah,
of running through their taps?
every city municipalities, the water treatment plants have different water chemistries. So one city, right up the road, another city could have a very different chemistry. And so we study and understand, like I could tell you some of the worst cities and some of the better ones, but no names, right?
No names.
No names. So, but we really solve those issues in a very professional, very legitimate way, just through real education. We believe that that's really the key.
When you say solve them, are you solving them for the municipality or the residents of that city?
So it's individually in the city. The water municipality, it's too expensive for them to do it. We can't expect them to deliver super purified water, but for the amount of water that they handle, millions of gallons of water a day, they do a phenomenal job. We're grateful, for the city water treatment plants. Great people work there, and certainly that's a great luxury that we have in America. But when the water, they're not required by law to regulate a lot of things. There are only 91 contaminants regulated over 85,000 in the environment. And so there's a lot of unknowns in the water. So we've done a lot of research on all of that. And so, but we can help, even if it's like most people think about a water softener. My water's so hard. We do that, but we also go way beyond that as well. Yeah.
Anyway. And what a
Come
delight.
visit us.
Yes, and just what a delight to have them in our city. So Genevieve,
Great.
they're on State Street, and we're just very grateful that you were here in our moment of crisis, and that you gave, I think you were pretty darn busy for a week.
About a month,
A month.
about 3 weeks, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so let's have you come up. We'll have Kyler take a photo. And thank you guys.
Yes, thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
So just come up here, turn around. You hold this.
Okay, thank you.
One, two, three. Perfect.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Glad you're here, okay?
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
I think I told you guys when that happened, when we got the text saying that they were offering this, I sent my wife with our orange 5-gallon cooler. Had that filled up, and we just set that on our kitchen table, and that's what we used for our drinking water for a couple days. So thank you for making that possible.
Okay, thank you.
Next item.
Now move on to our item number 2 of our work session this evening. And we welcome our planning commission members who have joined us here, and our city administrator will lead off our discussion with our planning commission.
Just a little bit of background. If you remember, a couple months ago, we had a rezone in a particular part of our community that caused some anxiousness in regards to what was allowed in our general plan for that zone. And at the time, and which is still the case, in this particular part of town, which I'm just going to give you some basic areas. So 1800 north to 1100 north is the north and south boundaries, and then the west boundary is all the way to the American Fork boundary. And to the east, it goes pretty much all the way to our eastern boundary, but most of the focus was probably not all that way. Maybe most of the focus is probably more from like, I don't know, First East or 600 West as we head west. So we have this part of town that after we were done with this issue and this rezone, there were a couple things. Number one, we need to update our general plan. So we're in process. We're narrowed down a couple firms that do general plans, and I think we'll have something ready and teed up for the city council in our December meeting for them to enter into an agreement. That process will be a 6-month process. Will be a very public process that will start in January. So we're going to remedy that by updating our general plan. In the meantime, the council gave staff direction to go back and take a look at that and consider in this particular area of town in the general plan, to amend the general plan to eliminate the R110 and the R112 zones in that plan. So that was the direction that was given to Daniel. Daniel took that to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission looked at that and said, we have done some research. There's some things that we feel that we want to share with the City Council in regards to our thought process. So we thought it would probably be best if we get the Planning Commission here and the City Council and have a discussion about what that looks like in that particular area of town, with the understanding that in that particular area of town, the amount of vacant properties that are still available to be rezoned, I mean, are very minimal, maybe 2 or 3 properties that could be subject to this. But we wanted to create a dialogue. As the Planning Commission's had discussions, I think they might feel a little bit differently to where the City Council is. Maybe, I don't know. That's, I think, the reason why we probably thought we should have some communication. So we've invited the Planning Commission to come and share their thoughts. I think they have a presentation they're going to share, and I don't know if they're all going to talk or just a few of them, or one of them. But anyway, we'll open up the dialogue. In fact, Planning Commission, if maybe we can have you sit in these chairs up here, so that if you need to get up and talk, we can get you to a microphone pretty quick.
There's a few more chairs right here.
Yeah. I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you. Okay, there's a couple more chairs over here. Bobby Joe Blake's our chairman. Bobby Joe's also a neighbor. Great person. They're all great. I do know some of them personally. Some of you I don't know very well personally. Anybody that's going to serve on a commission and not get paid and just get free dinner as their payment deserves credit.
And so Scott,
for
who are
this.
we missing? Oh, there's Peter, okay.
Okay.
Who
yeah.
are we missing? Lisa? Gotcha, okay.
So with that, am I turn it over to you, Bobby Joe? Okay, I'll turn it over to Bobby Joe and let them take it from here.
Oh, there's Jeffrey. There's Jeffrey. Great.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank Scott for giving us this opportunity. I mean, when we first heard this and we knew it was coming to you, several of us had planned to attend the meeting where it was going to be heard, and then that was obviously continued indefinitely, and we didn't know if we'd ever get that opportunity. So we want to thank Scott for giving us this opportunity. And we understand that our role is obviously different than yours in some respects, but we are here to, as a planning commission, do what we think is best in light of the needs of the planning aspects of the city, and then make a recommendation based on what we understand to be the best thing for the city in that regard, and then turn that over to you, and you're free to do with that what you choose. We know that you don't always go along with that, and that doesn't really affect us. We understand that that's the way it works. So it's not like a confrontational thing or anything like that. We just want to make sure that we let you know where we were coming from, because we want you to make the best informed decision when you're considering that. And so that's why we're here. I'm just going to go off basically what our findings were that we listed in our that evening when we didn't recommend the general plan amendment, and kind of elaborate a little bit on that. And then I'm going to turn over the time over to Peter, because he has some research that he's done and some findings I think will find interesting. And then we'll open it up if there's any of the other council if there's something that I've missed, which I'm sure I will, they can address that as well. But the first finding that we gave for not recommending this, the general plan amendment, was that the city is about to begin an update of the general plan, and this item would be better considered as part of the general plan. And as most of you know, as Scott just explained, we're really down the road on that. We're going to be selecting somebody, and a lot of you helped in that process, and we were there, and we feel good about that direction. And so that's going to be happening. And we felt like, given that fact, we should be addressing this in a more holistic view, and this idea of this particular amendment should be considered in light of what's going on with the other aspects of the general plan amendment, any other amendments that would be made to the general plan based on what the contractor is recommending or what we find from the public. And so not just doing an ad hoc amendment, but actually taking this in context with the other things that may be happening in respect with the general plan review. And so, because one of the things, and as listed in our staff report that we received that night, this came in response to, and Scott alluded to this, to a couple of different rezoning efforts in a very specific part of town, the south part of the Northfield neighborhood. And as planners, that's one of the things we're taught day one, is that we don't make decisions based on a very limited and particular set of facts and circumstances. We have to take into consideration how that's going to affect the citywide planning, not just in response to a specific need or a specific desire of a particular group of citizens, because it does have a broader effect. And this is particularly true when you're talking about a general plan amendment, because that is an overarching governing document for the entire city. And so we're very sensitive to that, and we don't want to be just making ad hoc recommendations based on the concerns of a particular very limited group of people or geographic area. And another thing that we've learned is that a lot of times these concerns that come up, and a lot of what we do is managing these, is they're based on a set of assumptions that isn't always borne out by the facts. And that's what Peter will address a little bit more, because as I have sat on a planning commission for the last 4 years, I came in with some some ideas that are not accurate about what it means to have a smaller, maybe higher density housing next to you, and how that affects your property values and things like that. This doesn't always seem to be borne out by the facts. And so I think reacting or making an amendment based on those things without thinking it through entirely and in light of the other aspects of the general plan needs would be poor planning on our part, and so we just didn't feel like we could recommend that at the time. The second thing was the particular amendment that was suggested. We had some concerns with. As Scott mentioned, there was the idea floated around that we take out the R110 and R112 allowances in the low density housing the menu. Like we call this our menu. What we look at, depending on depending on which area of the city you're looking at. This is kind of the menu developers would look at and say, okay, how big can we make lots in this particular area? So like in low density, currently, this is not accurate, by the way. This needs to be changed. But there's R15, R112, and R110 are allowed in that area. And isn't that right, Daniel? Yeah. Okay, so, and so to take 2 of the 3 out of that particular zone would be highly unusual. As you can see that every other zone allows multiple options. So it's kind of, it would be unusual, and because everything else in that area has already supported those R110 and R112 and even R18 in some of those areas in our low density area, it'd be unusual to just make that change. And then we also were concerned about that the second option was to pull the R115 into the very, very low density housing, but then we felt like this would be kind of gerrymandering a very specific area, change the boundaries, and then and pull that R115 designation into the very low density designation. Am I making sense? And change the boundaries to allow for that. But it'd be kind of gerrymandering. And then, as one of our commissioners stated, so well.
I want to make sure that point's understood.
Yeah.
Because this is something that I don't think the council contemplated when we had this initial discussion. But essentially, the very low density, which only allows agricultural RR and R120, we would change this area here to very low density. So you would have this become the yellow area, but then the R115 would now be. What's that?
Thank you.
But then, yes, the R115.
So the R115 would now be part of anything north of 1800 North, which is a little bit smaller lots than right now what's allowed. So that was one of the options that was given to the Planning Commission, which isn't something that came from the Planning Commission. That was more working through staff trying to solve the problem.
Yeah, and I think that was the one that staff was actually recommending that we go with the night we considered it, is to bring that, to put the R115 into the very low density designation, and then change the boundaries to encompass that very small area that Scott was pointing out that was in question, that kind of prompted this, to pull that, change the boundaries to include that into the very low density housing or designation. Does that make sense?
So they couldn't do that night?
We recommended against it. We
Sorry,
recommended against
I
that.
probably didn't make this clear. So they went through all this, and they were pretty much saying, we don't agree with the direction that Daniel was given from City Council.
Okay.
So at that point, that's when we said, instead of us just bringing it back to you and having the Planning Commission say, we disagree, and then the council just do whatever you want to do, we thought it'd be good to have a dialogue.
Okay.
And then, once we have the dialogue, then we can bring this back in whatever capacity the council wants to see it. Because ultimately, as it was pointed out, is as the legislative body, this is your decision. Planning Commission's recommending body, staff recommends, City Council's one, but we want to make sure the communication is clear before the City Council makes a decision as to where the Planning Commission is and where staff is. So that's the purpose of what we're doing.
Yes. Sorry, I thought you were familiar with what was presented to us that night. Okay,
No.
that will be confusing then.
May I for a minute?
Yes.
So, lots going on in my head.
Okay.
What was brought to us before, a couple months ago, was a subdivision that the developer wanted to have. We know the
Yes.
subdivision. On our general plan, it was wrong in a couple of different places, which caused confusion for our residents, which made us look very uncaring, unfeeling. We couldn't make a decision. We could only make one decision, right? And so our direction, and I don't think that direction has ever, we haven't ever heard anything about that, other than why you're here, is that our direction was go back, let's fix the general plan to give council an opportunity to either decide yes or no, or either fix this problem, right? So we never have talked about new proposed boundaries. We've never talked about eliminating R110 zones. That's never been a topic of conversation within the council.
Okay.
So, not sure where the miscommunication is.
Well, wait a minute, let's Scott.
But
Let me address that.
But the direction was to the staff, go fix the problem, because we have a couple of different public documents out there
Yes,
that
yes.
are causing confusion, and I think we're adding more confusion.
100% that needs to be addressed regardless of anything else. The
That was the
corrections-
only direction we gave them.
The correction needs to be made so that we're in sync, so that our
Right.
map matches what our key basically is saying.
So maybe I misunderstood, okay? This is my understanding after that meeting on what our direction was as staff, was that you wanted us to take a look at that particular area to see if there was some potential changes that could be made before we get the general plan all the way sorted through, because we're gonna go through this public process.
Well, the thought was, we have RR up north, we have R18. Give us some sort of a direction that we can kind of plot and listen to residents and be able to say, yeah, an R112 zone fits there. You know what? No, it doesn't. We wanted some flexibility, or even a say. I mean, in my opinion, I wasted that night, right? You could have had a monkey come up here and vote yes, because according to our codes, that's all we could vote for. We literally had to tell our residents, sorry, doesn't matter what you say, we have to say
Welcome
yes.
to the life of Planning Commission.
Right?
That's what we
So
do.
the direction back to staff was, fix the damn thing.
Yeah.
That's not fair. It's not fair to us.
Well, it's not like it's
not
not
fair.
fixed. It's just not, there's a discrepancy between what is said and what's designated in the key, basically, I'm calling it the key
Right.
on the map, and what the general plan, actually the code says.
Totally
And it's the
agree.
key that's out of whack that we just need to fix. Daniel, where's
No, you're correct.
Daniel,
But,
don't move.
sorry, let me address a little bit as Todd's talking here, because I want to make sure, again, we're kind of communicating here, because it sounds like I misunderstood what the direction was from the council. Our job was to go back and create options for the city council to consider, okay? That's what Daniel did. He presented those options to the planning commission. The planning commission now has said, here's what our findings are, and this is what they're here to present today, is this is how we look at this, and this is what we think. So I feel like that's what we're doing today.
But it sounds like Bobby Joe's saying, it sounds like you don't want to go that way. You want to go a different direction, and I think we're in line with you.
Wait a minute. That's okay,
I
let's-
agree with Scott that after that meeting.
Diana, turn on your mic so people can hear you.
I can hear you, I don't know if anyone
Okay.
Just like the audience.
No one
though.
has ever not heard me. No, I agree that there is some conversation that we have to have about the area, and I would love for us to be on the same page. I also believe that the general plan needs to match what comes out here, so I'm very interested in what you've learned.
Okay, yeah, and so if that's not your concern, then we probably wouldn't have an issue with us, you wouldn't have an issue with us not recommending, but because we are going to be going into a general plan review, and this is gonna probably come up, it may be of worth for you to hear what we were thinking, so.
Well, okay, and along those lines, if the direction we're heading is the council's okay to leave everything as is, with the exception of changing the key, which needs to be done,
Yeah.
so that it matches the code.
Well, I'd love to hear what Bobby Joe has to say.
Okay, sorry,
wait,
I'm not, they're here,
Let's
and we
go.
need to hear from them. I'm just saying, if the direction we're heading is the council's okay to leave everything as is, and we'll go through the general plan process, and then we'll make decisions on what we're gonna do with the area. I think that's where the planning commission was headed to have that happen. I was the one, it sounds like I misread what the council was, that they wanted to consider something before we went through the full general plan process and do something before we actually do all that. And if I've misread the council, then we're probably spinning our wheels a little bit here, because they've done some research and they need to be heard. on what that research is to have this proper communication. But that sounds like it's my mistake on what the council was asking.
Okay.
So with that, we'll turn
Okay.
it back to Bobby.
Well,
Jones.
and really, I'd be, if you're in line with understanding why we didn't recommend that amendment and you're fine with that, I mean, we can have this discussion at another time. It doesn't need to be tonight. And,
No, we're good.
Okay.
We want to know
Let's do it.
okay,
your guys' feeling on that.
okay,
And I think I understand it, but some of them feel like we're talking.
perfect. Okay, so our understanding, and this, I can see where you're confused with what I was saying because you haven't heard the proposals that were given to us that night. So there were two options that were discussed. One was to eliminate the R110 and R112 from the low-density housing designation, which, like I said, would be kind of unusual just given the fact that most every other designation has multiple options for development. Most cities follow that same thing. That would be really unusual to see that happening. Might raise some eyebrows. We also we're concerned that in doing that, it doesn't match what's already happening in that designation. I mean, there's already R110, R112, even R18s there, so it just didn't make a lot of sense logically. The other recommendation, that one was kind of already set aside. I think Daniel had already decided that probably wasn't the best route to go. So then the one that we were presented with that night was to take the R115 out of the low density residential designation and move it to the very low density designation, and then change the boundaries of the very low density designation to include that very limited part that's shown here, right here. So we're talking like from 6th West over to our boundary, our western boundary, and between 1800 North and 1100 North. So it's just that very, and to be honest, and really there are only a few parcels of land in that area that aren't developed. So it would be to include that small area in the very low density residential designation, and then allow for R115 development in that entire designation. And the problem that we had with that, as one of our commissioners stated, I thought really well, is we're basically robbing Peter to pay Paul. So what we're gonna have is a problem with people that are living in very low density saying, we don't want R115 allowed here. Yeah. And so you're gonna have the same problem you were trying to avoid in the low density designation, now in the very low density designation, in order to appease those people in that. And so it was robbing Peter to pay Paul. It just didn't make logical sense to us. And so so that was our second reason for not recommending it. And that goes beyond, I think, what you were even considering, it sounds like. So we could probably could have been good with just giving you the one reason. But yeah, we do feel like it's the best approach to consider this in context of the entire general plan review and decide what's best. And not set a precedent where we're just responding to the concerns of a very small group of people in a small area of the city and make changes to our overarching planning goals in order to appease those people. It just sets a really uncomfortable precedent for us, and I think for the city. And I just don't know if that's the can of worms we want to open. So that's kind of where we were coming from. Peter has some really interesting data because like I said, some of the reasons that prompt these concerns, like the reason people get so upset about these rezoning, is because they have some assumptions about how it's going to affect their property values and different things like that. And like I said, a lot of that doesn't. The facts just don't bear out that's actually the case. Yeah. And so it's interesting because I probably came into Planning Commission assuming that was the case as well. But since I've sat on, I've noticed that a lot of those assumptions are not accurate. And so I think it's just good to be informed and before we're making decisions like that. So I can turn the time over to Peter if you guys want to hear that.
Yes,
And
I think that'd be great.
hey, thanks for your time.
I think part of what Peter is going to present that's important is that we do have another development coming up in this area that we're gonna have the public come out and push against. And so to have the data that Peter's gonna present is gonna be a good thing, I think, for the city council to have and to know.
I'll try to only take a couple of minutes here to discuss this, but Like Bobby Joe said, what we hear a lot, and we hear a lot of these, but concerns about more dense housing are generally related to the property values of existing homes, and then potentially other impacts from denser housing. So things like more traffic on the streets. You could see things like a higher demand for city services, or more children in schools that put strain on schools. So I'm going to address both of those. I'm going to start with property value. So I just did a real quick look at this specific neighborhood. So the area between 1100 North and 1800 North, 600 West to the boundary with American Fork. So this chart shows the price per square foot. This is about 5% of the houses in the neighborhood. It's the 15 that sold most recently. And I should say the prices here are from Zillow, so they're probably not entirely 100% accurate, but they should give us a general idea. So this is the price per square foot of those 16 properties that have most recently sold, plotted against their distance to an R112 or denser zone. And in this area, as Bobby Joe said, that's R112, R110, R18. So if the price of a house was affected by its distance from a denser zone in this neighborhood, you would expect to see the dots going from the bottom left to the top right. And clearly they do not. There are a number of, the most expensive houses on a per square footage area are actually in R110 zones here, out of those 16. Would you go to the next page, Daniel? So I also looked at just the overall price of the house plotted by distance, and again, there's no correlation by distance to a denser zone. So where it does correlate, if you'll go down to the last one, is to the square footage of the house, right? So this is what that chart would look like if there was a correlation. Really, it's just the size of the house, and to some extent, the size of the lot. A lot is about a quarter, maybe 30% of the cost of a house. And so there's a correlation between the size of the lot and the value of the home. So based on this, and again, this is limited research, it's only based on a few properties in this specific neighborhood, but having a denser zone next to or near your home does not affect your property value, right? And then in terms of impacts to streets and city services, the differences in the number of houses, and I think this has been mentioned a couple of times, are really small. You know, we're talking about going from 15,000 square foot lots to 12,000 or 10,000. In this neighborhood, again, that probably results in a difference of maybe 3 to 5 houses in the remaining developable properties. So, you know, 5 houses, even if they have a bunch of teenagers, do not clog the streets or the schools or any of the other city services. But I'd also like to address some of the things that I think that a change like this would affect, because these are things that we should consider as we update the general plan, because they do have a bearing on what the city will look like in the future. So I don't believe that it affects the price of adjacent houses, but it does affect the price of the houses that are built on those lots, right? The size of the lot does have a bearing on the price of that house. So by removing these smaller lot zones from the area, that then requires that future homes built in the area are on larger lots. They'll probably be larger houses, and they'll be more expensive. So one of the original things that staff had looked at, as Bobby Joe said, was removing these designations from the entire low-density residential general plan area, which covers not just this area, but all the way to the bench, and then it swings south. So it's something like a quarter of the city. So, you know, just in general, Pleasant Grove is not an affordable city to live in anymore. The average family that already lives here couldn't afford to buy a house in Pleasant Grove right now. You know, I probably couldn't afford to buy my house again, and I only bought it 3 years ago.
Medium home, 2-bedroom, 2.5 bedroom, $500,000.
Yeah, it's expensive. And so decisions like this do have a knock-on effect on that. You know, we can't solve that affordability issue with zoning alone, but it does have an effect, and that has an effect on the kinds of people who can move into these neighborhoods, right? The public servants who work for the city in the police department or the fire department, school teachers can't afford to buy a house in this neighborhood or in most of Pleasant Grove.
Correct.
But so that was one of our contentions as we looked at this, is that if we're going to make that decision, if the city is going to make that decision, that should come as part of a holistic process where we look at the entire general plan for the entire city and get input not just from the residents in this neighborhood, but from the residents in all of Pleasant Grove, including those maybe who are renting and are hoping to buy in Pleasant Grove, including those who own townhomes who are hoping to eventually move to a single-family house, and find out what they want Pleasant Grove to look like as well. And we think that's best done through this 6-month planning process that we're about to start. It includes a robust public involvement effort where we'll be able to talk to residents from across the city. So that's just some limited thoughts about the impacts of these kinds of choices that we make, and why, especially since we're just starting this plan, that it's worth pausing and addressing that as we complete the plan. So,
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Peter. It's good to see you, Peter. Haven't seen you for a long time. His beautiful analytic brain.
As long as we have some of our questions here,
Any other planning commissioners want to?
as long as we have them here, can't we say, if you want to say a few words? We never get to
Come
hear
on.
from him.
Now's your chance, come on up.
Todd.
There we go. Okay, never mind. Yeah, would like to hear Mr. Clyde.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
So I have definite opinions about this because I build. And so when zoning and these subdivisions and these plats come in, I tend to look at them a lot different, or maybe I see them quicker or stuff like that. And a lot of times when we run into this, especially when we're so limited, we don't have this isn't like these acres of farmland that we're just going to go put a subdivision in. They're usually these small pieces. And I think of one that we talked about a year ago, Liston? Was it Liston property or whatever?
Yeah, the List.
1100? Yeah, and he was looking for a zoning change. And the main reason he was looking for the zoning change was because when these particular lots are an R110 or an R112, they have certain widths that they can be, right? And so he couldn't actually fit these lots in the width that would work. They were going to be super deep. They were like 16,000 square foot lots,
Right.
but they needed to be like R18 based off the width. And so sometimes it's an averaging that they're trying to come in where they're taking, they're trying to just make the subdivision actually flow or actually work because we're limited in these parcels that we have left. And when you look throughout the city, anyway, we have a lot of very thin, super deep lots. They're all over the place in the city that's left, which I can see more of those flag lots or stem roads and stuff like that. They're going to become more popular to be able to develop those pieces off.
Yeah.
I look at it as I don't think people can really physically see the difference between an R112 and an R110 lot. And it's also depend on how it's shaped because that's barely 2,000 square feet. We do hear, a lot of this kind of stuff. Usually I'm trying to get it to sit and to go with what Peter was saying. When I go get a construction loan or when I'm looking at building and saying, okay, if I build this spec home, how many square feet does this need to be based off that cost of the lot? And you really can never go over about 33% of the cost can be in the land. If you're over that, your ratio is way too high, and you've got to build a bigger home. You've got to make it a lot more expensive to be able to justify that price of the lot. And that's what almost keeps things on a bubble. I've got some houses that we're building right now in Orem. The lots were like $230,000, and they are 0.17 of an acre, right? But those homes are going to be about almost 900 grand, and they're 4,100, 4,200 square feet fully finished, right? And so you have this market that also restricts what happens. But if we want even some of these parcels, or we also have to be respectful to the people that own the property to be able to develop that property. We hear a lot of opinions where people come in and say, well, they don't want to see this, they don't want to see that. Well, they don't own the land, right? And so we also have to be respectful to the people that own the land that might have had that in their family for 50, 60, 70, 100 years. And here's an opportunity for them to benefit financially for their family, right? But a lot of times I just don't see the difference. Now, I don't personally feel like high-density housing is even an R17, in my personal opinion. I feel like it can be smaller. I also have always been dumbfounded as I've gone to different cities throughout the valley of why they think a small lot is a negative thing. And the reality is you're seeing more and more of the next generation, they don't want to maintain the yard. And so they actually are looking for smaller and smaller properties. But even to be able to afford it, you know, kind of a thing. So I hate when I hear these people come into to us and they talk about they're going to lose the value of their property, it's going to increase crime, or it's going to cause safety from traffic. Yes, on things that are like, okay,
And
but the
overcrowd our
subdivision might add
schools.
2 lots. Yes, yeah. You know, we might add 2 more houses into this neighborhood or 3 more houses into this neighborhood. Now, when you look at us, and when you go back to a city perspective and a property tax perspective, smaller lots are actually more advantageous for you in collecting city property tax. I know a lot of that goes to the school district, but if you took an acre of property and you're able to put 4 lots on that, in essence, versus 2, you might get a $2 million. You're gonna probably get $3 million in actual value of the property versus sitting at 2 million on half acres. And that is the reality, because the more density those houses are, the more that value will be. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You just get more properties. Anyway, I just wanted to just state that a lot of times it has to do with basically how are we going to fit. And I think discussion would be different if we had hundreds of acres or a ton of acres that had no development on it. But these are pieces now that are just trying to fit in. What did you say? There was probably 2 or 3 left, maybe in that area, that really can be affected much. Is that correct, Daniel?
Yes,
Yeah.
so this map that I have right here shows the properties that are missing
Yeah,
Anyway, thank you.
thank you.
Hi, everyone. 2 other things that we talked about associated with what has already been presented by Peter and by Bobby Joe is taking one of the plots into consideration that we did see where the zoning, the developer wanted to put in, I think it was 8 houses total, and the residents only wanted 6. And so taking the size of the properties, the size of the homes, the size of the mortgages, here in Pleasant Grove, you know, we have the opportunity to have accessory dwelling units. And so if you're creating a bigger home with a bigger mortgage, what better way to help pay the mortgage than to have an accessory dwelling unit in your home? Well, what does that do to traffic? That has a higher impact on traffic than having a family that's in a smaller house that doesn't have to have an ADU. And when you have an ADU, accessory dwelling unit, many times those people, they don't really, and I don't want to label them, they don't really take responsibility. They don't have the same level of responsibility, the same level of care many times for the properties, for the neighbors, for, you know, how they drive and stuff. And so in our opinion, as we were looking at that, it's like, okay, here you have, you know, 6 houses with each one of them having an accessory dwelling unit. You've increased traffic by 1/3 instead of what it would have been with only 8 houses. So that's one thing that another thing that we did take into consideration. And then going along with what Peter said about you have city servants and stuff that can't live in the city because of the cost. Well, not only that, the other aspect of it is it's really discriminatory when it comes down to it. So if we have bigger lots, if we are restricting the types of properties that can be here, demographically, ethnically, if you think about it, there's a specific ethnicity that can fit into this demographic, and we are reducing the amount of opportunities for different ethnicities to come into and enjoy being in our city by demanding that we have these bigger lots. So those are 2 other aspects that we did talk about that I wanted to bring up.
Hey, thank you. Todd, you want to And hey, I'll give time to Lindsay too, but she's our newest member. Okay, all right.
Just echoing what they said, a lot of the points that I brought up in the meeting have been talked about already. Just really think we need to take an objective approach to our general plan. And yes, there are those items that need to be cleaned up. I don't think they're terrible. I think they can be understood. There are those things that don't connect between the code and the summation tables that are in there. Those need to be corrected right away, but I don't think can create a terrible misunderstanding. I think we can get past that. But we do need to take an objective analysis of what's going to happen within our city within the next couple of years and the next couple of decades. And the best way to do that is wait until our general plan goes through the process it's going through in the renewal right now. That's going to help prevent kind of these ad hoc things that are happening here and give city council some direction on what's a good idea within these areas, not just what's a good idea within these 2 blocks, but take a more holistic approach to the whole plan. But yeah, a lot of my other items are already brought up, so I'm not going to bore you with those.
Thank you. Is there any
I haven't
council,
seen-
anybody got
I
any?
haven't seen his clean face shaven. I didn't recognize him at first. I do have one thing I want to,
Okay,
do you want me to go now? or
yes,
you
go
want me-
ahead. And then
Okay.
I think Todd.
First of all, thank you. Thank you for all you're doing. Thank you for the logical thinking. And I know you are looking at it in a way that we need to hear. How I have felt before is that you have the planning commission that's protecting the city, and you have us who are representing the citizens. And I think for Todd and I, the confusion of that night is that we had no choice. And so I don't know if there's a way to and maybe we'll, as we go through the plan, maybe that menu is that we have two zones or 2 densities per zone, but that somehow, I don't know if it can be worded, that we still could say, developer, thank you for coming to our city, thank you for wanting this piece. But out of the 12 and the 15, we would recommend that you build the 15. So that was the confusion for us that night, was that we didn't feel that there was a way for us to choose.
So
Yeah,
maybe could I just clarify
Yeah.
something
so
land
Tina
use
addressed it.
wise? The inconsistency between what was on the key in the general plan and what's written in the general plan regarding which size of lots can go in which
Zones.
density area on the general plan was not really the issue of confusion. I mean, I get that
It was, Tina.
but it wasn't
It was.
the
To the
deciding
residents, it was
factor.
very confusing.
Because what's in the written plan is the zoning, the R110, the R112s, right? And so by law, by state law, one of the findings you have to make as a legislative body when you approve a zoning request is that it is consistent with the general plan and its policies. So what we were hearing as staff and what you were hearing from the residents was, we do not want R110, and maybe we don't even want R112 size lots in this area, which necessitates a change in the whole general plan land use map to change the definition of low density, medium density, very low density. And you have the power to do that. If you look at other general plans in other cities, some of them do not define medium density or low density with R110 and R112 zoning in them. And the only reason I bring this up is because we just looked at 3 or 4 different general plans as we were interviewing people to update our general plans. Other cities have defined that very differently. And that's the decision that we need to make, that the Planning Commission needs to recommend and the council needs to make, is how do you want to define in your general plan, what does low density mean to you? What size lots
Yeah.
does that mean? What does very low density mean to you? And so the idea that you were floating of having, you know, 2 different zones in a low-density residential designation on the land use plan, if those 2 zones are in the plan as recommended for that area, it's not impossible to say no. It's not impossible to do what you're saying, but it's very difficult because you have to make very specific findings that there's something about that piece of property, something about that development that is unique, that you would rather have the one zoning designation than the other.
So I think that's what we're asking. We're asking for your help to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Because what happened is that night, we were told, Todd, you got to vote yes or we're going to get sued.
Well,
That's what we were told.
you did not hear that from your attorney. No one asked the attorney. You guys all
Okay,
came
so
in
just,
with that
we're going to just,
predetermined.
we're going to just counsel
thing.
here. How many times, council members, did we hear that night?
I don't think we,
Before-
But how many
Before-
times did we
no.
hear that?
You didn't hear it from your attorney.
Well, we heard it. Whether it came from you, Tina, or not, we heard it.
I know,
And we
but
heard it loud and clear, and that's not just me.
But now it's a moot point, so now we have to move forward with the information that we have from the planning commission. We're going to get the new, who you've been interviewing to come on board with the general plan, like, we've got to move forward. 'Cause it's a moot point, it happened months ago, we just don't know at this point. No one can really remember, so, I mean, hashing it out just isn't gonna get us anywhere. So let's move forward and change the general plan, get this updated, and make it better for our residents and for us as bodies, both the planning commission and the city council, to be more informed and all on the same page when we're having these discussions, especially in the public eye in a public meeting, because it just puts everyone on not a good page when we don't know what's going on. So that's where we're moving forward to be able to do that.
And I would say that what we need to do is rely on the planning commission as they look at providing us with the general plan that comes back to us so that we can take a look at that, as opposed to us sitting up here saying we want this or that, because I do not want to be in a position where there's 2 choices in this piece of property, and I'm going to sit here and listen to this, and generally what will happen is the response will be a political response, not a reasonable response. And I don't want to be in that position at all. So I want the planning commission, you folks are the experts in this area. We're
so,
just,
oh, Mayor Ivan.
Can I suggest a path forward here, Mayor? And let me tell you, I think the reason we're having this is probably my misunderstanding of the direction of the city council.
No,
The
this
last
is
thing-
very good.
The last thing I want is frustration amongst the council, with the staff, with the planning commission, because here's what I was trying to accomplish, is that we know we're doing a general plan update. The concern is what happens if somebody wants to come in and do something in there before the general plan is updated, that might be something that's gonna cause us a similar situation to what we dealt with a couple months ago. That was my intent, okay? So if that's what we were trying to get in front of you was, okay, council, here's your options. One, we can just wait for the general plan process to happen, or we can take a look at this and say, you know what? We don't feel comfortable with that zone in that area, so let's eliminate that zone. That was an option for you. Or we could do a temporary zoning ordinance and just say, let's just pause everything for that particular zone so that we can continue on with life and other people can still develop, but maybe not at that level. So these are discussions that were happening with staff level, working through the planning commission, which is what brought us here today. But if I misread what the city council was saying, and the city council's intent the whole time was fix the key, let's do our general plan, let's go through that process, we'll have our new general plan sometime next summer, and we're okay that if people come in and ask for a certain zone that right now is designated in our general plan and allowed, again, and Tina's expressing that the council probably does have some leeway, as opposed to maybe, because Todd, that dialogue was coming from me, and that was a dialogue that was before the meeting. because I did not say that in the meeting. But before the meeting, you and I had that conversation, and I was the one that told you that this could open us up to litigation, okay? Probably not my place to say that. I'm not our attorney. So I apologize for making that mistake. And I think, to Sid's point, I think at this point, let's move forward. And so if the council is comfortable with the direction of, we're gonna work through the general plan process, we'll talk, I mean, Tina has some good ideas. Maybe not put actual designations, which gives the council some more leeway
I love that.
to have that. We can get all of that situated so that by this summer, and we have the public input.
Fix the key.
Yeah, and fix the key.
Like
Fix the
yesterday.
key right now.
Yeah, fix the key right now. I mean, because that was really the problem
Yeah.
that we had, is
Yeah.
that we had residents saying, no, you can't build that. The city staff was saying, yes, we can build that, and city council, just approve it, yes, or you're gonna be sued.
Daniel,
That was terrible.
you got a big old Cato pen, you can
Terrible.
just scratch that out and write it in.
Actually, I don't know that he can legally. I think we have to probably,
Yeah.
We can fix the key with the same process that we were bringing
Okay.
this other
Yes.
proposal, right? Just take it to the planning commission as a general plan amendment to fix the key,
okay.
and then it comes back to you.
But that is something that needs to be done ASAP. I mean, we're going on this discussion now of, weeks
been a
and a
couple
few
months,
months, and we don't want to get in another situation because the key hasn't been fixed, and if that's more of a simple fix while we're waiting for, the process of everything else be updated, let's just get that done.
And just to be clear, by fixing the key is adding the R110 into the medium density.
Yeah,
Okay, it is fixed, just need to bring it brought to you, but I have the map already fixed.
okay.
Okay.
But it
Government,
also gives us the ability to say no because residents don't want that. Is that right or not?
not yet.
Other than
Not
Tina
yet.
has expressed, you
Yeah.
do have some flexibility, and it depends on the specific situation.
What specific situation would we have to say no?
Well,
We'll
again.
let's have this
Yeah,
discussion later.
that needs to be a legal discussion.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as it, because there are legal ramifications, I think, to that. Again, I'm not the attorney, even though I've,
Okay.
Well, what I'm asking is maybe at the time, maybe we eliminate the density number, the R110 from that
absolutely.
medium, as we're fixing the key. That's what I'm saying.
That's the one that has to go back through the process.
Yeah.
That's what we asked the planning commission to do.
Well, no, that's a complete rebuild on the plan. I'm just saying, as you're eliminating these or fixing the key, let's just eliminate the R110 designations as
Nee.
Tina.
Because
No, we
they
can't
can
do
only
that.
follow the code. And the
No,
code
no.
matches the code.
Set, no.
And it's not going to fix the underlying discussion with people coming in and asking for an R110 and that,
And just so that, why can't we do that now?
because that would have to be a whole other.
Well,
That's
so
a plan, that's a plan change.
again, that's what we were in process of doing. We went back to the planning commission and said, will you take the R110 out of this zone? And this is what the planning commission came back and said, here's where we're at.
Let's just fix the key and let them
Good
come
idea.
up
Yeah,
with the code.
so
And then,
that, again, because that was the message I took away was, we want R110 out of this area. So that was the direction we gave, so that's what got us here today. So, again, I think, Todd, once we work through the general plan process, that's gonna get figured out. And whether we just say, we're gonna now have a low-density residential, but not necessarily attach a zone to it, which now gives you guys flexibility in how that works.
But once that happens, all those developments are gonna be built out anyway, and it's not gonna matter.
Well, I
One-
don't know.
the
if
one
those
you're
are- I don't know if those are gonna be built out in the next 6 months
months.
or
Well,
8 months.
There's one that's already grandfathered in.
But, so Todd, I mean, again, that's
not
why
gonna
as
do
staff, we were suggesting, the council has the ability to say, okay, we're not gonna change the general plan, we're just not gonna allow an R110 in that area for 6 months. You have the power to do that.
So I'm gonna give my quick 2 cents
Yes.
here. I'm gonna get some words in here. It brings a big smile to my face to see the planning commissioners here, right? As a former planning commissioner, I think Diana, and it's great to see you guys collaborating and working on these things because you are the land use authority. I think even with my time in the planning commission, and I can't speak for Diana, that I think we have the best planning commission we've ever had.
Yes.
Currently. I appreciate all of your comments, your insights. I really do. Peter, thanks for information tonight. And so I'm excited for our general plan. It's going to give us a new direction. With our old one, just I imagine when they did it way back when, that they were excited back then that it was going to give a new direction to our city. Well, just like this, in the next 6 months, we're going to have a great vision and direction to go off. And I think it's going to create a better synergy between us. And that's what I'm looking forward to. So get her done.
Thanks, Eric.
And sorry,
Rob?
Tim made a great point. This is way easier when it's acres and acres of land and it's a 100-lot subdivision.
Yeah.
We're now dealing with infill. And infill is people trying to develop that property to get the best use out of that property, but also something that matches with what's in the area. We're trying to find that fine balance.
I'll tell you what I hate the worst about all this infill is what it does to our roads, because we constantly dig it. We're creating our own speed bumps on every road. I mean, really. You go down 1100, it was your road. It was once a great road to bike down. No, it's just a bunch of hoop-de-doos now. So, but anyway.
So I know we're over time, but if the city council's okay with this direction of us working through the general plan process.
Yes.
With the understanding, and the key's already been changed, right? I mean, the key now matches the zone, so changing the key is done. But the issue is that somebody could come in the next 6 to 8 months and ask for that R110. Tina's saying that the council has some flexibilities in how to do it. We already know of one development that's going to be coming here in front of you very soon, where they're going to be asking for something very similar. So, you know, we'll work with Tina on what that looks like and on that individual development, but then we'll proceed on the general plan. Is everybody okay with that direction?
We're good.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, thanks, Scott.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay, I've got my planning commission here. Now I look out and see the ones here tonight. And, you know, I know they were mayor appointments, but I call them hires. I'm a businessman, okay? And Peter, I don't know where you came from, but you were already hired before I got there, so anyway. But
I'm pretty sure I hired him.
yeah,
I would love to take that.
I've had that opportunity. I've had to hire and then I've had to fire somebody else's.
I have
so
not had
anyway.
fired.
okay.
But I want the letter planning commission, hey, and when I look at appointments, I like a mix of people, okay? And because they bring different perspectives. And as I sit and watch the planning commission meetings, I don't catch every one, but I come in there, and it goes back a long time ago when I was on the planning commission, and I says, holy smokes, I can't believe what these guys are hearing. We had it easy back in the old days. We didn't have that much development going on. So anyway, I thank you. You're all excellent hires, and I appreciate your time that you spend with us, and even our newest one is an excellent hire. So
Thanks, you
thank you
guys.
for coming this evening.
Thank you.
You know, we'll get a raise for you.
Yes, yes.
Maybe
I-
we.
Here's a
I-
pass to go run at the rec center.
I'm really think we need to really look into upgrading your dinners a little bit too. So anyway, but
I
Okay.
understood being hired as you got paid. So that's why I never worked for the Fugals.
I think it's like Biltmore. This is like the walk-ons,
okay. Thank you, guys.
red shirts.
Thank you.
Okay. So that concludes our, we're a little past our time, so I ask to adjourn from our work session.
So moved.
Have a motion to have second.
Second.